This is day 5 of the November 91 7-day retreat in Springwater. Here are some of the questions from individual meetings, group meetings, and also just handed to me outside of a meeting. Isn't the idea of enlightenment helpful to start one on the path of seeking? If I had never heard anything about a state different than our daily confusion, would I even bother to do this work? Does the idea of enlightenment inspire us to look, or is it the pain and confusion in which we live which makes us stop and look and listen to what is going on? How do I know that I am open and not deceiving myself? I don't want to deceive myself. Are images always bad? And should we get rid of them? Why do you give talks? Is sex without fantasy really possible? What if people take advantage of you when you're so open and undefended? The barking dog is driving me nuts. It's one thing to take in the crowing of the crows, the cawing of the crows and the honking of the truck, but when it goes on and on and on, what is one to do? You should have been in Poland. A couple of weeks ago or so, 3 weeks ago, there was a retreat there. It was held in a newly developing suburb of Warsaw where rich people are building houses, fancy houses. All the windows and doors and yard are barred with wrought iron bars, and each yard has a dog of an amazing vitality. When we arrived in the little car, just opening the door, the dogs started barking, one setting off the other in an instant chain reaction. And since there were always some people coming and going, there were workmen still building some more of these houses. There was sometimes all day long, it seemed like a dozen dogs barking. What was one to do? What is this lust for enlightenment and its accompanying frustration and anger at the noisy image-filled mind? If there's no self and I'm not anything, then how does not anything eat or sing or have bowel movements? Is this all about energy flow? Two questions about enlightenment and 3 about self. What is this? What is eating? Will people take advantage of you if you're open, not defending? How do I know I'm not deceiving myself? Why do you give talks? Why do I give talks? Nobody has asked me to stop yet. So I keep going. nobody would come here anymore. No one invite me to give talks. I wouldn't start nailing up posters that I'm going to give talks. Would retire into our nice little new house on the hill and enjoy the view of the sunset. Let's take those, which one should we take? Take those questions about enlightenment. All of us maybe have come across some idea, something written, somebody talking about enlightenment, that there is a state other than the daily confusion, pain and drudgery, conflicts. And one feels inspired. Inspired to do what? To look at the pain and the drudgery, or to go after an idea, wanting it, as somebody describing it with lust, the lust for enlightenment, to get this peak experience or state to end all other states, solve all my problems. And because I want it so badly, I'll do anything to get it. Submit to any practice or any system, any teacher. And needing, of course, constant further inspiration. That I'm getting closer or making progress. Maybe as somebody mentioned yesterday, the idea I'm already enlightened gives one a boost, has some effect, inspirational. I'm already enlightened. So what do I do with that? The dog is barking, and I'm already enlightened. Can I listen to the dog? Without any reaction? No, it can drive the nervous system tremendously. I noticed that because it didn't end in the daytime there in Warsaw. It was at night too. I used 2 earplugs in each ear. That helped some. To protect the nervous system, get some sleep. What amazed me, that none of the people there complained about it. Didn't complain about anything, the primitive conditions, the crowdedness, one toilet and a flimsy shower for everyone, tiny little counter for the food. Nobody complained. They wanted a longer retreat. Was there lust for enlightenment? No, we didn't talk about that. People were into looking and being with someone who was doing that with them. Really eager to start something freshly. But if there had been a lot of talk about enlightenment, well, that may have gone over too. I don't know. Although a lot of the people come from places that have this talk and goal of enlightenment and are beginning to question something about the systems. Felt relieved to be someplace where there was very little system. A lot of freedom to look and be. Because we had no chairs, no extra cushions, a hard, skimpy mat. So one has heard about it. We've heard. I read the book about enlightenment stories, and I don't know how many times I read those enlightenment stories. Always sounded so good. I found out later that the stories never, they end with that moment or that day. They don't tell you what happened afterwards. The next day, the next week, the next year, or 10 years later. something inspires us to stop and not just go on but wonder. And then the thought of enlightenment, will that be nourished and cultivated, or will one begin to look what causes the darkness, the constant endarkening, not knowing what we're doing and going on with it? Maybe we know what we're doing intellectually, but we don't see it. And here someone says as a possibility to see directly thought linked to emotion and seeing the enclosure of that, and the seeing, if it's without judgment, being the freeing. So do I now get inspiration out of thinking about this, or shall we look together as we're doing here? In a big hall, in a little room, alone, one-on-one, we're looking and listening together. We may not be verbalizing. We can just sit there, two of us, sometimes a group of 6. No question has come up yet, and we're just sitting there together quietly, in each other's full presence and the presence of the deck and the snow falling, the green grass turning white, listening to thoughts coming up and wants and fears, without judgment, without wanting it to be different, wanting to be like somebody else. This is where toxins start flowing. We're very concerned about eating toxic things, inhaling toxic things, coming in touch with the skin with toxic fumes, but thoughts of comparison or judgment, down on oneself, down on others. There, maybe the most highly toxic cause the most highly toxic substances anything could cause. They disarray our whole inner organism, create conflict, and then we don't like the conflict, and more conflict ensues with the conflict. And all the while chemicals are floating around that have no realistic outlet. A realistic outlet, I mean, if a real danger beckons and we need to run, and we run, then the adrenaline is used up and the muscles are using it. The heart beats in order to support more oxygen for running. But sitting with fearful thoughts, there's no outlet to that. There's only more thought. I don't want to feel this way. Can there be a dawning of insight into what is happening? Not, I should get rid of it. There's more thought, more conflict. Just the dawning of insight that something is going on which causes heavy, depressed, fearful, angry moods. And it is the continuation of thinking and imaging and remembering. What am I to do about it? I don't know. But can there be a listening to this all? Without judgment, without interference, not knowing what to do about it, not knowing what to do about the barking dog. Just listening, benignly, openly, spaciously. The body is affected by the angry thoughts and the sound of a dog constantly barking. This one is fairly distant, and still it can impact the nerves. Although we talked about it in one talk, can one watch how one's reaction is also impacting the nervous system? The anger about it or the resentment creates chemicals which impact the smooth, harmonious functioning of this body. So can it just come down to bedrock listening without reaction? Is that asking too much? Who knows? We'll have to try. Well, there can be bedrock listening without reaction. And if a reaction comes up, that is also listened to. Not taken to be the truth, not caught up in it. And if there is caught upness in it, we'll wake up again. There'll be a moment we will wake up to having been caught up in a reaction against the feelings, against the dog, against the thoughts. And then just listening to that like a swelling stream of ongoing thought, feelings, sensations, emotions, conflicts. And in that listening is not of that stream. That listening, that attending, looking. When it's free from judgment, when it's free from wanting things to be different, just open, not just focused compulsively now on this stream, but open to hear the cough, the wind, the people, someone moving, cloth and legs moving, breathing in and out. Breathing in and out here, breathing in and out someplace else. A sigh. It's all there. And the awareness is not thinking. It's just awareness. The word where means true, wahr, like the German Gewahrsein. Being in the presence or seeing what is true, what is so. A turbulent organism, the desire to be free of it, listening to all of that, and the crack in the door. Is that possible? There are moments for every one of us when perception is free of self-centered concern. Maybe such a brief instant that it's not noticed, because so quickly thought comes in and says what should be or shouldn't be. But when self-centered concern or reflecting about oneself is quiet, then there is some sense of freedom and energy and joy, sometimes even a welling up of love. There's not a state to be imagined as being bleak or fearful. It's a person saying, actually, we talked about it in a meeting, it was not just a note. He said, I looked inwardly and I didn't find anything. There was nothing except thoughts and images. It was very clear. I didn't find an entity, a me, an I. Just the thoughts about it, ideas, imagery. But then the thought arose, well, then what is it that's eating? Because we do say, don't we, I am eating. I'm enjoying the food. I am singing, I'm dancing. I'm evacuating in the toilet. But just because we put it this way doesn't mean that there is an I, but there's an organism, a live organism, and that much more alive and energetic when not constantly thinking about this thought-created I. Because it would sound a little bit strange to say the organism is going into the kitchen. The organism is eating. Somebody who is more poetic than I am maybe find some better words to put it. Well, one can be very simple. There's eating. And there can be a very joyful awareness of eating, the goodness of the food, the flavor, the texture. And if one eats slowly, then the whole digestive system functions very well. Slowly and taking one's time, not gulping as we're used to from maybe having too little time or thinking of something else while eating, reading while eating, such a customary thing, or talking. It's not easy to really digest food well if one is engaged in a heavy conversation at the dinner table, or maybe quarreling going on, or argumentation in a family. Then the best food, organically grown, won't do much good. Your organism won't be able to take care of it because it's busy with argumentation and conflict and anger or fear. As a child, I remember being afraid what would happen to my brother at the table, because there was always something happening at the table with him. I was as thin as a beanstalk. So, maybe the way the question is put already leads into possible confusion. Who is it that eats? There's no who, but there's eating. And there's remembering where the kitchen is. Memory can come in very helpfully there, not to go into an empty room. And of course, there's the smells, and one follows the others. It's not that intelligence ends when there's insight that the me is an image, or a whole bundle of images. It is a heightened state of intelligence, because now there's much clearer seeing, much less interference through what I want, what I'm afraid of. How is this suiting me? What will I get out of it? I don't like him, I don't like her. All of this kind of stuff dampens or makes impossible an intelligent perception of the situation and action out of that perception. So the question, won't I get exploited if I'm so open and undefended? What about that? Is that a theoretical question? Or does it come out of a state of openness and undefendedness? There's a lot of paranoia around the idea of getting exploited, which is idea. Somebody is using me for their own ends. Maybe it's happening. Maybe it's true. Can one see it clearly without the idea, but test it out? Is somebody unethically using my labor for their own gain and profit? That's sort of the definition of exploitation. Using me for their own ends. And what about myself? Am I using others for my own ends? It goes both ways. We're doing it. And there's not clarity and some freedom from this self-centeredness. This is what we're doing. The way we already see somebody is, what can he or she be for me or do for me? We see others in terms of our own needs, and others see us in terms of their needs. This is how we live when there is little or no clarity. When there is some clarity and not this overwhelming drive of my own needs to dim what people are like, what things are like, then I may see being exploited. And then I may say something without anger, just putting it factually. I can't do this. Or or just bringing up the matter. Can one bring up something when one does feel exploited without anger? Or is it impossible? The others won't listen. Then why do I work there if we take a work situation? Do I need the money to support myself, my family? Is it the only place? There's no other place right now I can get employment. This is the only place. And I see that my labor is being used for somebody else's profit. Well, there's a little profit in it for me too. I get some pay. But to look at the thing factually, this can only happen if there's not already anger. I'm being exploited, and the driving, nagging feeling of wanting to get back or lash out at them, punish them, threaten them, or whatever. These things interfere with some open communication, which I don't need to defend anything, but just look at the facts. All the energy that goes into defending this me can be available for just looking and listening, when it's seen that this me is just ideas and identifications. If it's seen. If it's not seen, that operates automatically with its defenses and attacks and all the other stuff, trying to aggrandize itself or put itself down. All so habitual, so programmed. And someone says, how do I know I'm open? I don't want to deceive myself. One can think about this endlessly, but thinking cannot spot self-deception. Self-deception, one can think about it, but that's not seeing it. Seeing self-deception is different from thinking and worrying about it. Self-deception is thinking that this thought and image and memory created me is real and needs to be defended. That's self-deception. To see that directly, well, then it's clear. It doesn't have to be defended, it's just imagery, it's phantoms. How can I be sure that I'm seeing? You gotta look. How can I look? I don't know. Just look. Listen. And can there be a dawning discernment of the difference between thinking about myself and seeing, here I'm being defensive. Hearing oneself. Defending some point of view when it's just said and somebody else has contradicted it. And becoming defensive about it. Becoming argumentative, arguing with the other person. There can be awareness of that, just like of anything. Suddenly there's a waking up to defensiveness. And then wondering whether this has to go on and continue. What one is defending is just an idea with which this idea of oneself is identified. It's screwy. But it's happening. If there's no awareness, it goes on between us and within us all the time. We were often amazed. We used to play a game called marbles. There are many versions of it where you have to bring your marbles through other people's territory where you can be bumped. You have to bring them back home, roll the dice. And how do you become identified with that little marble? This is me. He bumped me. I'm going to bump him back. There can be real anger and stuff. Or else one just plays for the fun of it. It's not me, it's just the marble and the dice. Me is the idea that it is me. And that arouses emotions which are real because the body is pouring out chemicals which have palpable effects. And that reality of the anger or fear or whatever seems to validate the idea that I am real. What is real are organismic reactions. They are real. Of course, the thoughts are also real, but they don't point to some real entity. It's just a real thought. But see, one can explain it, but each one has to see it for ourselves, that this is so. Like person saying, waking up in the morning, it was already light, there came the thought, oh God, I should have not overslept, I should have woken up. Why didn't I? Some such stuff coming up. And then the immediate realization that this was what prevented a sense of freedom or clarity, and which set in the moment these thoughts were seen for what they were. A relief. Nothing I have to do or not do, it's just something that happened. And if the question, maybe there's now a state of clarity, and a state of clarity speaks for itself, it's clear. And yet, clear thinking about oneself can also masquerade for being clear, for having clarity. One can deceive oneself. So it's good to ask this question, but not to ruminate obsessively over it. Question comes up, is there self-deception? Then look, and one indication is that I'm thinking about myself, how good I am, how bad I am, what I need, what I should do. Now, wait, does the thought arise, should we never think about what we're going to do? I'm not even saying we should or shouldn't, just clarify what's happening. But of course, if one is going to build a house, lots of thought has to go into it, lots of imagination. How will it look? Here, when this thing was built, the stakes were changed around from here to there. Will it be too high? How will it look from the sitting room? Looking out, imagining, how will it look to me if I sit here and see this building? Will it block the view of the trees? There's a lot of imagination going on and thinking. And now there's what I feel is a very attractive shed there. So the question has come up several times, isn't imagery useful? Doesn't it have its usefulness, its application? Of course it does. One has to understand and see when does it get in the way and do mischief. If I look at you and categorize you as my enemy, a Jew, a Palestinian, an Arab, Christian, then there's already without even having met, talked with each other, looked at each other, there's already enmity, animosity, and stone throwing, or more than stones. There, clearly imagery is utterly inappropriate, dangerous. And this is a very crass example, but how are we with regard to people we're working with? Does imagery grow up? We talk about someone else, how he is, how she is, and imagery starts getting settled in the mind. Do we see the danger of it? That the image we have of this person from talking about him or her is not what this person is this moment? And sort of check back by talking to each other, being in each other's presence, so that we don't need to rely on old images, what he said, what she did, but meet each other freshly now. There's never been any recommendation or suggestion that images are bad and should be gotten rid of. Images are there. The brain is constantly producing them. It's its function, to function what it is programmed to do safely. That it turns out not to be safe as a failure in the brain. Not to see where imagery leads to great danger. It just produces imagery of what was, stores it in the memory. And then that memory is triggered at all kinds of times. When something reminds one of something, here comes in the memory, which may have nothing, in fact, to do with what is going on now. Only some slight memory connection, association. So one cannot trust the brain with its memory storage to be accurate. It just does a function. And to access that memory intelligently needs intelligence. Intelligence of seeing what is dangerous and what is safe. And to go on what I remember about you that happened in the past and meet you on that basis is not safe. You may not even be that way or have meant it that way, but the memory stored something inaccurately. Or maybe it happened, but maybe you have changed and I have changed. Past tensions are past tensions, past tense. What's the present tense? Where do we meet each other? Get together. Brain produces a body image that is so for each healthy human being. And if there is some interference, some neurological disturbance in the production of this body image, the coordination of the body goes haywire. I read this, you may have seen this book by Sachs, The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat. A case, he has a collection of case histories. One woman lost, or the brain lost the ability to form a body image. She couldn't get up out of bed anymore. Had to, just due to a tremendously strong energy system and willpower, did she learn a new system of cues to substitute for this failure to form body image. So we have a body image. That's why we don't bump into things and know how to get into a bus, how to reach for something, and there it is. Know that this body that hit the door, not somebody else's. And therefore, next time be careful as one passes a sharp corner. But difficulties arise, or complications, is if one doesn't like one's body image, thinks other people have nicer bodies, I should have nice bodies like that, or is all infatuated with one's body image. Like the story of Narcissus drowning, trying to kiss himself in the reflection of the pond. So infatuated, not hearing or seeing anything else but my grandeur, my importance, my whatever. Then blindness sets in. The healthy function of the image becomes perverted into getting satisfaction or putting oneself down, which ends in depression, to which one can also get hooked. We can get hooked on being depressive because we think this is the way to be and this is our existence. And we're attached to some kind of an existence as something. This goes automatically, but here we're questioning it. So somebody's saying, is one attached to one's depressive states, to how miserable one is, how downbeaten or victimized? The story of that is the attachment to it. Someone asks the question, we can look, maybe wake up to it at one moment where we nurture this image of the victim, who everybody else is doing in, and living up to it, and therefore becoming a victim. These images have a sort of a self-fulfilling quality. Victim imagery, when it is active, invites victors. And the pattern repeats itself endlessly, unless there is some wondering about it, waking up to it. And the waking up, not immediately filled with judgment. I should get rid of this image now of being the victim. Then I set myself up for failure because I can't get rid of it. I can only see it. And in the seeing, there's no image of right or wrong. There's only what has been going on automatically for 50 years, maybe. To see that without judgment, that is a new state of being. Not manipulating images, which is more imagery, but seeing imagery without nothing, just that. And in that clarity and openness of seeing, there's also the crackling of a chair, or the heat in the room, or the coolness of the window, the breath, the sigh, quietness, the sounds of quietness. When there's no one who wants to get something out of all of this, then there's also no one to deceive. There's only the sound of the radiator. Breathing, heartbeat, whatever is going on. If there's a thought coming up, can it be seen just like the sound of the radiator is seen, heard? Seeing and hearing are not different. It's one whole perception. the thought comes up, I can't do it, or somebody else is better, can that be heard? And not acted on, allow it to take over. Just hearing it. We will end here for today.